Well, hello everyone, and welcome to a very brief analysis of the 7.5 hour VOD that I put up last week. Now, in case you missed it, the intention of that VOD was to give you the hard evidence as to the fact of whether or not a game of Ultimate Alliance 3 can be completed with the main cast of characters without accessing any menus and without leveling the character, making any adjustments to the members of the team. That was the general concept of what we were attempting to explore. And I wanted to up the ante and make it as difficult and trying as possible. In which scenario I included the caveat that we were going to attempt it on mighty difficulty as opposed to the standard friendly difficulty. And I ran into a couple of issues that, well, ultimately made the run impossible. So we're going to have a look at a couple of those things. We're going to discuss things that I would change and maybe do differently. And then at the end, we're going to explore a proof of concept to see if it is completable in a friendly difficulty. So let's talk about the three main issues and or things that I would change if I were to attempt it again. Before we even get to the point of is it a completable challenge in its own right. So let's start with the first issue. So the first issue was very much a self-inflicted issue, and that was the idea that we were not going to pause any of these cutscenes. I don't think that that's a bad practice, especially if you want to re-explore some of the benefits of the gameplay, but for the sake of a run, it adds a significant amount of time. I think the cutscenes that we ended up going through was easily a half hour to 45 minutes, probably closer to an hour, especially when you take into consideration that any of the times that I failed a boss fight, oftentimes I had to go back through a lot of these cutscenes, which is not exactly ideal for a challenge run type concept. So the first change that I would make if running or attempting this again is I would definitely allow myself to skip through these cutscenes by, hitting the pause button and then skipping the cutscene. It just doesn't really prove as much of a benefit to eliminate that from the style of gameplay that you would be doing. So realistically, that's something that would easily make the challenge a lot more feasible. The secondary issue that I ran into was here within the confines of the aftermath of the Sandman fight. And the biggest problem that arises here is when you are playing through a new game file, you are required to interact with the shield point after Nick Fury in order to progress in the game. So in terms of getting through one of these challenge runs without accessing any menus, well, simply put, that's just not doable because you are forced to interact with that shield point in order to get to this specific line of dialogue and that door to unlock to allow you to progress through later portions of the game. So that's something that you have to take into consideration as well, is if you want to play it truly menuless, there's no way to get around seeing this menu right here once you are at this point in a new game run. But let's say that you are willing to look past both of those aspects, you still run into one pretty big problem. And that problem really starts right here once you make it into the Doctor Strange fight. Problem is, with this fight, there's a lot of labor-intensive focus that goes into this fight in general when you're playing through a new game. But if you're going through the restriction of not being able to level any of your character abilities, that increases the difficulty of it. It also makes it a lot more annoying to attempt and take on if you are giving yourself the restriction of using characters which, by all intents and purposes in any of the experimentation that I've done for this game, are C tier at best in our tier list of characters. And that's considering the characters with their abilities at their maximum potential. Now, right here, I'm playing through with a max level 300 level character team, and so I'm able to make my way through this pretty easily, even on a superior difficulty, or ultimate difficulty even, is what we're doing right now, which, you know, really kind of paints things in a different light, because Doctor Strange is no slouch when it comes to the fights and the damage that he can put out, especially when he is in this secondary phase of the fight and he has access to moves such as this Flames of the Faltine infused Bolts of Voltac, because that will just eat away at the minimal amount of health that you have on your team. And that can be really problematic because you don't have a whole lot of resources as to how you can counter a lot of the damage that he's going to deal out. And you're kind of falling behind in the damage that your team is able to deal. And this is really the first fight where that manifests, but you also run into this problem with all boss fights after the fact. A little bit of spoilers for that run if you're still trying to make your way through it in bite-sized pieces, but I lost to Maximus for the first time ever in this game when playing through with that challenge difficulty on a mighty difficulty. It was not something that I was happy about, because Maximus is a relatively easy and straightforward fight that I should not have had any trouble with. And nevertheless, it was a fight that I failed on in spectacular fashion a couple of different times. And that pattern just continued as we made our way through the boss fights towards, well, the boss fight where we ultimately fell apart in our endeavors to get through a no buff original team type scenario. And that was the Corvus Glaive fight. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to boot up that save file. I'm going to change the difficulty to friendly. We're going to see if we can make our way through those fights to see if this concept is even worth revisiting. If it is, well, we will set a live stream time so we can do just that with the couple of adjustments that we have talked about up until this point. But first, let's see if it's even something that can be done. So here we are at the exact point that we left off in the challenge run. Now, I've only made one adjustment, and that was when booting up this save point, and you'll see that here upon accessing this menu. If I can get away from the ISO 8 equipping that it's trying to shoehorn me into, you'll see that in the bottom right-hand corner, we have updated the game difficulty to friendly as opposed to mighty, because I learned the hard way that this Corvus Glaive fight is definitely not something that can be done on the mighty difficulty under the parameters that we set for this type of a challenge. But let's go ahead and have a brief look at the team. You can see that the levels line up with the levels where they should be in this type of a new game run. You can also see that I have 0 equipped ISO 8, and you can see that I have not enhanced any of the team's abilities. And I am not going to do so for the sake of this test, because that's kind of what we are aiming to determine if this is worth my time. Now, I know that there's maybe a little bit of a level discrepancy. You may not be able to get up all the way to level 35 if you play through on a friendly difficulty. So we definitely had a lot of trouble with this fight in the live stream format. And I think that this is one of the areas where Star-Lord actually has some benefit, because he makes his way through these reality clones a lot more efficiently than the other members of the team do. So I'm going to try and prioritize switching off of switching onto Star-Lord when any of those reality clones are present, and conserving his health throughout the remainder of this fight where I can help it. And that actually wasn't super bad. Let's get a synergy in here to get him stunned out. And it already feels a lot more achievable than it did last time. And I still feel like I'm hitting with a limp noodle, but I can actually see progress in the damage that I'm dealing, which is definitely beneficial. Let's go ahead and switch over to Drax so we can conserve some health for the other members of our team here. And oh, get it. Thank you. That is going to put us into phase 2, which we're going to switch back over to Star-Lord for preliminarily. Because again, he is pretty good at dealing with these clones with his Amp It Up ability and the damage that he's able to deal in quick bursts to them. Ooh. I am going to now switch on to Gamora to grab that little bit of health that was there. And then we will pivot off into a different member of the team here to get meaningful damage onto Corvus. Ooh, we are super close there. We're going to pop our extreme attacks to conserve some of our health. And that's unfortunate from Gamora to have her going down, but I'm going to let the other members of my team focus her and getting her back on her feet, and by that I mean Rocket and Groot are going to take the initiative on that. But I should be able to draw the fire well enough here. Nope, get away from that. Okay, Rocket and Groot got Gamora back on her feet. And now we have to deal with the reality clones resetting here. But, again, Star-Lord makes pretty quick work of them. And pretty efficient work at that. We are going to heal him back up for these portions, and then we will get the stagger stun in here. I would have liked to have had my extreme attacks online, but I feel like it was beneficial to have used them when I did for the sake of getting that damage in against them. That was not the ability that I should have used with Gamora there. Alright, so let's use the Amp It Up here a couple of more times to break through the majority of the health of these clones. We've only got one revive remaining in this section of the fight, and I would rather not have to use it on Rocket and Groot, or on Star-Lord for that matter. Okay, get away from that. But that's a stagger up there. And since Star-Lord remained alive, that was allowed him to get a lot more damage onto, or allowed him to build up his extreme meter. And now Star-Lord has revived Rocket and Groot, which is definitely not what I wanted. But we should be able to systematically chip away at the remainder of his health, because all things considered, the team is still relatively healthy. Except for Star-Lord going down right there. And of course we now have to deal with this area of effect attack.
To come to this, at least for you.
And let's see if this gets the amount of damage in that we need. It actually got us pretty close. I don't know how much health that is, but it's not what we needed to get healed up, but certainly welcome. Oh, that was good. That was really good. Let's hit him again. We're actually almost through this fight. That was actually it. Not bad. So yeah, this challenge may actually be doable in the friendly difficulty. So let's at least see if the Proxima Midnight fight is doable. And then we will see if we need to do a reset for another live stream to attempt the friendly difficulty with the entirety of the run. So here comes the Proxima Midnight fight here. Of course she seems madder than last time. Ooh, that was... Ooh. Now, the positive thing about the fight with Proxima Midnight is there are these Outriders that will drop health and energy refills throughout the fight, and they do get refreshed at the midway point. Okay, time to switch up a strategy here so we can get rid of the bulk of these opponents. That actually was a nice level up for Drax there to get some additional health onto him. And now that we don't have to worry about the Outriders here, I can now focus on healing Gamora. And then let's get some more damage onto Proxima here. And now it's just her that we have to deal with until the midway point. So I actually feel like this is relatively obtainable.
We've played this tune already, Proxima, and this time it won't end up with me on the other side of the universe.
Oh, that was not what I wanted there. But we're approaching the midway point of the fight, which is a lot more of an even distribution when compared to the midway point or the half or the second phase of the Corvus fight. Oh, I got away from that, you know it. I should have saved those. That was bad planning on my part. Whoa, that was wild. I didn't know that she could hit me out of the sky like that. But the fact that we've made it through this fight, this far into this fight, oh, she keeps summoning them in every time that she... Oh, was a much needed level up there. Oh, and that's a full health refill? Drax, pick that up, please. Thank you. I don't know how lucky that was, or if that was a guaranteed thing. That was a full energy point refill there, so it must have been from taking out the mighty enemy that was summoned in. One of them may drop the resource guaranteed, and the other drops the other. I don't know. But it's much appreciated, whichever the case may be. Okay, let's get this mighty enemy down and see. It just dropped a small health refill that time. But let's see if we can get another one there. Not for the full health amount, but an amount nonetheless. So I actually think that this challenge may very well be completable if you are really grinding out the character levels the way that you should. Because just like that, we made our way through that fight with Proxima quite efficiently because, or in spite of the level deficits that we had. So, reassessing, reevaluating, taking a step back and looking here, I do feel like this is a challenge that you can do on the friendly difficulty, at least with the main story quest. I don't know if that's the case for the DLC epilogue that I initially planned on doing when I dreamt up taking on this challenge. But we're going to give it another try. I don't know if it's going to be this Saturday or if it's going to be next Saturday that we try it. But go ahead and leave a follow on my Twitch because I will be streaming the attempt live with a couple of adjustments and changes that I discussed earlier in today's video. If you think that it's completable, please let me know in the comments down below. And I hope that you are keeping an optimistic eye open for either the live stream or the VOD of that challenge when it happens. Thanks so much for your time, and I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day.